Well, Banjo-Kazooie came out 24 years ago today, so what better excuse to rank every single world in the series? Okay, not a great conceit for a video, but seriously, the levels in the Banjo games are awesome. I spent an entire series of videos talking about these games, and the levels are one of my favorite aspects of this classic franchise. For games about exploration and combing every corner of the map to find collectibles and secrets, you need to have levels that are a blast to travel through, and that complement the movement of your character. And Rare's level designers understood that, crafting a bunch of super fun levels, and a number of mediocre and poor ones as well. But which ones do I think are the best, and which ones do I hope I never travel through again? That's what I'm here to do, ranking and discussing every single world from the Banjo-Kazooie series. For this list, I'm ranking all the worlds in Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, Grunty's Revenge, and Nuts and Bolts that A, contain collectibles, or B, are unlocked by collecting Jiggies, and it will also include the hub worlds and the Testo track from Log's Lost Challenges. That's 37 levels total. I'm not counting the levels in Banjo Pilot because they're not based around exploration and navigation, but rather racing, so it's unfair to judge them next to the other games. And just for the record, Spiral Mountain is a unique case as it appears in all 4 main games with different functions. For Kazooie and Tooie, I'm counting it as a separate level from Grunty's Lair and Isle o' Hags, so they will be ranked individually. And since it's the hub world in Grunty's Revenge, and it's an unlockable world in Nuts and Bolts, those versions will also be counted. I'm judging these worlds based on a number of factors, including physical level construction and design, theming, aesthetics, difficulty, and charm, and I'll also be considering how fun each of the level's challenges are to complete. I recently replayed all 4 of these games as well to keep my perspective fresh, and doing so definitely made me change my mind on a number of these levels. And keep in mind, this is just my opinion, it's okay to disagree, but don't be a dick about it, blah blah blah, you get it. With that all out of the way, let's start at the bottom. Number 37, the Terrarium of Terror. Okay, let's just get this one out of the way. I can defend some of the levels in Nuts and Bolts, but not this one. The Terrarium of Terror is a very bad level on almost all accounts, and it has nothing that could possibly redeem it. Let's start with the surface level stuff. This level is straight up ugly, with a disgusting visual style and this ugly green hue that just makes it seem way too murky and unappealing. Its layout is also very confusing. It's compact but also incredibly dense, with several areas to visit that never feel organically tied together. Not to mention it has some of the worst Jiggy challenges in the game, with special anti-shoutouts going to the Germ Popping one, Pikelet's Shoot All the Gruntbots mission around the Blossoming Flower, and especially that Saucer of Peril mission. Ugh. I guess the music is alright though. I actually really like the action version of the Jiggy challenge theme, but that hardly makes up for the level just being poorly designed overall. Number 36, Grunty's Castle. It's just the final boss area for Grunty's Revenge that contains fights against Klungo and Mecha Grunty, and of course, the requisite quiz show. It's not very pleasing visually, and I suppose it does its job fine, but it's barely worth talking about. It only gets the spot above Terrarium of Terror because it's not absolutely horrendous to look at. Number 35, the Testo track. For this level's intended purpose as a testing ground for the vehicles you build in the main game, it definitely works. But as a world with actual objectives in it for the Log's Lost Challenges DLC, it's very lacking. In addition to just being a lazy reuse of assets, the map isn't built to handle Jiggy challenges correctly. The terrain of the Testo track doesn't suit any sort of mission, and really, they could have been set anywhere. I don't know if these DLC Jiggies came from scratch concepts for the rest of the game, but honestly, it feels like a bad, but thankfully optional, way to end a playthrough of Nuts and Bolts. But I guess it has more Hero Klungo saves to world, so that's cool, I guess. Number 34, Spiller's Harbor. This world, in a word, is boring. The layout is uninteresting, the aesthetics are flat, and the atmosphere is bleak without being interesting. Normally, I like portside and docks locations, but this one is just too bland for its own good. It's strangely empty for a world that clearly has signs of people living there, though given the issues with the writing in Grunty's Revenge, having more characters wouldn't help it that much. I honestly don't even have that much to say about it beyond that, it just makes so little of an impression on me. Number 33, Spiral Mountain from Nuts and Bolts. I think it's really cool that Spiral Mountain is the final area of this game, rather than something that's just seen in the beginning, but there's so little to do here that it basically doesn't matter. I like the challenges, as it makes for a solid finale, but since that's all you're doing, it means very little to come back here in the first place. It makes sense for the story to end here, but I just wish there was more to do. Spiral Mountain was never the biggest area, but it feels even more constrictive than usual. Maybe if there was more space, and again, more challenges, it'd be better. Number 32, Spiral Mountain from Banjo-Tooie. I gotta say, I appreciate how Banjo-Tooie lets you skip this area when you quit and reload the game, because Spiral Mountain in Tooie is very dull and depressing. You're barely spending any time here, and it just feels so lifeless. And that's the point, I get it, but Banjo levels excel when they have a level of personality and charm to them. Tooie's Spiral Mountain doesn't, beyond reminding you of Spiral Mountain from the original game, but it pales in comparison to that iconic intro. It sets the tone, but otherwise it's not that fun. Number 31, the Gigaseum. This world has one of the more unique themes in the series, being based entirely around sports, which is not only interesting, but perfectly suited for nuts and bolts, and the Jiggy challenges all match up to the idea nicely. Unfortunately, it's also a very empty world, mostly consisting of a dome and some empty space, and because you're visiting a lot of the same locations for each challenge, it makes the world feel small even if the amount of ground you can cover is huge. I wouldn't have a problem with this if that empty space were used more often, but to my recollection, there's barely any air-based challenges in this one, and the ones that are here stick closer to the ground than they should. It's a neat idea, but the execution leaves a lot to be desired. Number 30, Pterodactyl Land. When people complain about Tooie's levels being way too big, this is the level they often point to, and it's definitely not undeserved. It's absolutely huge compared to Banjo and Kazooie, and while a dinosaur-themed level could have been cool, they just don't do enough with the concept to distract from the large size. There's too few collectibles to justify the amount of space, and while it isn't really a confusing level to navigate, it's a frustrating one to navigate. But that's not the only problem. The level leans heavily on the boring side as well, with a very dull color palette and semi-interesting terrain, but not enough done with it. It gets the point over Gigaseum, another big empty world, just because it's at least got some decent terrain and platforming, but I completely understand why people call it a low point of Tooie. Number 29, Logbox 720. So this level has a really fun theme that's completely ruined by its cramped, cluttered map design. This type of level construction just doesn't work for Nuts and Bolts' gameplay. I complained about the empty space of Gigaseum, but this one has the opposite problem, where there's so many objects and platforms to maneuver around that you never feel like you can get a real grip on the terrain. It makes Logbox 720 seem more complex than it actually is, especially because most of the drivable ground is pathways instead of solid areas. This is also where the game starts to get annoying with its challenges. Again, because of how much the level itself gets in the way, you're going to find yourself spiraling out of control because your wheels brushed up against one errant bit of the topography. The theming is all it has going for it, and I do like the idea of setting a world inside a game console, and yet its level design ultimately lets it down. Number 28, Gruntilda's Lair. Okay, I'm gonna piss a lot of you off with this one, I know, but rounding out the bottom 10 is Gruntilda's Lair, the first level from Banjo-Kazooie to make this list. I'm gonna be honest, I've never liked this hub world. It's too linear and confined, and while I understand that the game gives you a decent sense of progression through the lair as you beat more and more levels, it feels more like busy work to me. It's iconic, I get it, and hey, that Grunty's Lair theme is awesome. But it just feels too claustrophobic to me, and I'm sure I'm in the minority, but I don't enjoy traveling around this place. If it's any consolation, this is the first level on this list that I think isn't poorly designed. It's really just my personal preference shining through here. Number 27, Cliff Farm. Cliff Farm is a decent enough starter level, I guess, but it just doesn't do a lot with its farm theme that differentiates it from a typical grassland area. The farm only makes up like 60% of the level, with the rest just being a simple stage that doesn't make that much of an impression. It's surprisingly a bit of a slog to get through thanks to its level construction, which is surprisingly large for the first real world of the game, and the fact that you don't have Kazooie for the entirety of the world. But honestly, it's a level that's more boring than anything. It doesn't do a ton wrong really, it's just not very interesting. Number 26, Cauldron Keep. Another level that's just the final boss area, hence why it's lower on the list, though because the bosses are some of the best in the entire series, and the Tower of Tragedy is the superior quiz in my opinion, it gets a bit of a bump over other final areas. Plus it has some really nice aesthetics, it perfectly fits the darker tone of Banjo-Tooie without going overboard, and I really like the colors here. It's still of little consequence in the grand scheme of things, but I still kinda like it. Number 25, Spiral Mountain from Grunty's Revenge. It's really cool seeing an expanded version of Spiral Mountain here, even if it doesn't really make sense with the layout of the other game's hub worlds. I mean, where exactly are these areas supposed to be? Are you telling me that Spiral Rise and Spiral Mere are just past the cliffs of Spiral Mountain? That said, I actually like this hub world quite a bit. It helps that it has a full set of Jiggies, Jinjos, and notes to collect, so you're encouraged to explore and find everything. Grunty's Revenge sometimes has a problem with presenting its levels in a way where the layout makes sense, but Spiral Mountain mostly avoids that problem with a nice sense of vertical scale. It can sometimes be a little weird figuring out where you are height-wise, but once you've toured most of the level, it's not that bad. I'm sure some of you are going to be miffed that I put this over Gruntilda's Lair, but honestly, this Spiral Mountain is pretty decent. Number 24, Rusty Bucket Bay. The level that gives people who played Banjo-Kazooie nightmares, Rusty Bucket Bay is a level that really only appealed to me after playing this game a number of times. It is easily the most devious level in the game as far as platforming and hazards go, with so many areas that are tricky to navigate or that can kill you if you're not careful. It's a pretty significant difficulty spike above the levels that came before it, and it can be annoying, and believe me, if you asked me 5 years ago what my least favorite Kazooie world was, this would take it hands down. Nowadays, I still can't say that the level is great. I mean, there's a lot of rooms to keep track of, the atmosphere is a bit too dingy, and I don't really care for the music, but I can have some fun here. Not a lot, but enough to give it a pass. Number 23, Clanker's Cavern. For an early 3D water level, this one certainly isn't bad, and unlike Rusty Bucket Bay, I actually like the dirty, dank vibe in this world. It's a little bit too much on the frustrating side for an early stage, and if I'm being honest, I can imagine a lot of people getting aggravated at this level when playing it for the first time. It certainly gave me more than its fair share of grief when I first got here, and nothing is worse than that sinking feeling you get when you're about to drown here. But when you look past all that and really examine this level, it's a pretty alright stage. Nothing spectacular, but a world that's heavy on the platforming, and good platforming to boot. Number 22, Isle o' Hags. I am fully ready to admit that placing Isle o' Hags above Grunty's Lair is purely my nostalgia for Tooie over Kazooie, but in all honesty, I much prefer the layout of this one. It's open, but not too spacious, and while it could have been a bit more condensed, I don't find it nearly as irritating to navigate through here as I do Grunty's Lair. Having a warp for every single area, rather than just a few shortcuts sprinkled throughout, definitely helps, as it makes it far easier to get around. Honestly, I'd put Isle o' Hags even higher if there were more than just a handful of things to collect here. Like, it technically has 10 Jiggies, but one is just the one King Jingling gives you, and the rest are your rewards for saving the Jinjos. Given more stuff for the player to do, I could see this hitting the top 15, but as it stands, it's still an alright world. Number 21, Click Clock Wood. 3 years ago when I released my Banjo-Kazooie retrospective, I got a ton of comments complaining that I didn't like Click Clock Wood, as evidently it's a lot of people's favorite worlds from the first game. And listen, I absolutely love the idea of a natural world that centers around the seasons and the way the environment changes alongside the weather. I also love the aesthetics, with each season bringing its own ambience, texture, and colors, and the music also adapting to the time of year. The problem is that the level's physical design bothers the hell out of me. I don't like levels where you're primarily traveling vertically because it never feels as satisfying as traveling either horizontally or into the distance. It's especially an issue in 3D platformers because if you make a mistake with your jumps, it's far more likely that you're going to fall a long distance and have to spend time retreading ground just to get back to where you were. It's infuriating, and while I think the amazing sense of atmosphere has softened me on this level quite a bit, hence why it's towards the middle of this list, I still don't consider it the amazing world others do. Number 20, Spiral Mountain from Banjo-Kazooie. Finally, we've covered all the Spiral Mountains, and of course, the original iteration is the best of the bunch. I mean, for just being the tutorial section, and one that you never ever have to go back to, it's still an absolutely iconic opening stage. It's got plenty of open space to learn the controls and momentum, and it gets you super pumped for the adventure. Even if there isn't a ton of stuff to do, I think it's a genius move making the collectibles here grant you an extra piece of health right out of the gate, an awesome incentive for learning and demonstrating the game's mechanics. And do I even have to mention the Spiral Mountain theme? Grant Kirkhope came out swinging with this soundtrack, I swear. There's a reason why this was chosen as the banjo stage for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. It's a perfect representation of the series as a whole. Number 19, Grunty Industries. I bet a lot of you are going to be shocked that this level is as high on this list as it is, straddling the halfway point between the top and bottom 18. And yeah, I understand why a lot of people hate this world. It's very large with a ton of rooms to explore, many Jiggies take a long time to collect with lots of steps needed to get them, and an overall dark and dim mood throughout. As a kid, I definitely would have considered this one of the weaker worlds in Tooie, and possibly the whole series, but honestly, after playing this game so many times, I've really come around to this level. I still can't say it's great, as while the challenges are pretty good, your initial trek through the factory to open up everything is a long, arduous process. But once you do finally start earning those collectibles, I think it's a good time. It's a large level, yeah, and there's a lot of floors and locations to memorize, but for me, it's not confusing. Dense and packed, sure, but not tough to navigate. You may not care for that complexity, and I totally get it, but I think it's pretty cool. Number 18, Gobi's Valley. We're into the upper half of this list now, and honestly, from here on in, all these levels are good. Gobi's Valley isn't the most appealing world visually to me because I find its desert textures irritating on the eyes, not to mention very flat. But that doesn't mean it isn't a fun level with a compact design that still feels pretty big and leads to a lot of great exploration. By this point in the game, you'll also have learned every move, and with that full set of tools at your disposal, the game really starts to ramp up the intricacy of the challenges. There's a lot of really enjoyable, if fairly rudimentary, puzzles here that, again, take advantage of every single maneuver you have. In essence, it kinda acts like a midway checkpoint to make sure you have a handle on all your abilities, and while it isn't a spectacular level, it's definitely got a lot going for it. Number 17, Bad Magic Bayou. This is one of the more dangerous levels to explore in Grunty's Revenge because of the poisonous swamp, and admittedly, it can be a little confusing to get around this one. And it's certainly not the prettiest level, with some drab colors and a pretty boring music track. But damn if I don't enjoy this level just on the aesthetics alone. The mixture of a rainy swamp and a haunted house is pretty cool. That haunted house is the highlight for me, with plenty of thrilling enemy encounters and a nice puzzle involving lighting candles on the floor. Not every bit of this level is a joy to travel through, especially in the lower areas, but the high points of this level really make up for a lot of its shortcomings. Number 16, Nutty Acres. So this world, I think, makes for a good introduction to nuts and bolts thanks to its wide open spaces and mostly flat terrain. When you begin the game, you're not making vehicles that perform well under stressful situations, and that means that Nutty Acres is the perfect grounds to get you familiar with the mechanics. It's also one of the cozier levels in the game too, with a nice tropical vibe and a pretty relaxing theme as well. Ultimately, it's the Jiggy challenges that weighed this level down for me. Some have just the right balance of difficulty, but the others are either far too easy or ridiculously annoying. Especially in the later acts, it feels like every task can either be broken in half either by just building a good vehicle or by literally cheesing the game, or will give you a ton of grief because of poor design. So overall, while I still like Nutty Acres, it does get bogged down with some clumsy objectives. Number 15, Freezing Furnace. When I first partially drafted a script for this video last year, I put Freezing Furnace very close to the bottom, and my sole reason for doing so was that it felt so disappointing compared to Hailfire Peaks, a level with a similar concept that, spoiler alert, I really love. With a snowy mountaintop exterior and lava-filled furnace interior, it's inevitably going to invite comparisons to that classic 2E world. But setting that correlation aside and looking at this level on its own, it's a very enjoyable stage that's somewhat diminished by its design. I wish the snowy section and the furnace section were expanded into their own levels as they were originally intended, because while they are both good areas, I don't feel like they live up to their full potential when they're connected like this. But it does ramp up the difficulty nicely, as the furnace especially represents the greatest challenge in the game, and it's a pretty great wrap up to a solid adventure. Number 14, Glitter Gulch Mine. I've always been a little iffy on this level before making this list, but when I really thought about it, I like this level a lot. It is a pretty dingy place as you'd expect from a mine, and it just radiates dirt and dust and cobwebs. But underneath that dark exterior, there's a lot of fun challenges for you to complete. From the generator cavern with the fire eggs, to the Jiggy in the power shed, to reassembling the Jiggy from the crushers, there's plenty of great stuff to do in Glitter Gulch Mine. It's a far more complicated level than the one that came before it, with a lot more back and forth, and maybe you'd call that poor design, but as you know if you saw my retrospective on 2E, I find a lot of pleasure in exploring this place. It all culminates in a good sophomore stage that has its faults, but also has plenty of gems hidden inside. Number 13, Banjo Land. Is it nostalgia baiting? Sure, but Banjo Land manages to be a good time even beyond the obvious callbacks to the previous games. Some might consider it a little too heavy on those callbacks, trying to remind you of better games rather than doing anything original. But what I like is that the Jiggy challenges aren't always tied to elements of Banjo past, and they're not afraid to go beyond those boundaries. Like, yeah, you have to defend Clanker's eyes and ride these Gobi-like vehicles and re-fight Mr. Patch, but the designers knew to stay creative and not just be, hey, remember this player? It lets the scenery naturally remind you of the previous games without shoving it in your face all the time, something that'd be very easy to do with a level that is literally a museum dedicated to Banjo history. And with the open space and set pieces, I find it to be an enjoyable trip down memory lane. Number 12, Breagle Beach. This level is a lot of fun and goes quite above and beyond the typical beach theme to deliver some good surprises. First off, this is where you rescue Kazooie from imprisonment, giving you far more movement capability, and that quarry section actually makes for an interesting contrast with the otherwise pretty clean beachside area. It's also the level that really starts to ramp up the platforming, as the previous sections didn't really focus on that as much since you're still getting your bearings. And there's some good platforming challenges here too, playing with the terrain a little more to make things more exciting, with a couple of mini games here and there to keep your mind occupied. It's a very respectable stage indeed, and considering this is the final level from Grunty's Revenge on this list, it's not a bad world to go out on at all. Number 11, Mumbo's Mountain. It's hard for me to look at Mumbo's Mountain objectively nowadays because I've played the original game so many times that I can clear this level out very quickly. And when you're playing this level at such a frantic pace, you sometimes forget to appreciate just how awesome this level really is. By its nature as the first real stage, it is understandably simple, and its pacing is so hectic thanks to its cramped but still expansive design. Even though it's probably the smallest world in the whole series, besides boss levels, stepping into it for the first time is still spellbinding thanks to the open space, bright and cheery music, and multitude of things to do. Its smaller size means that you're collecting things at a faster rate by nature, giving you plenty to do as you familiarize yourself with how the rest of the game will progress. Mumbo's Mountain starts the game off wonderfully and leaves a perfect taste of what you should expect. But it just barely didn't make it into the top 10, so let's finish this off with the 10 best Banjo-Kazooie worlds. Number 10, Showdown Town. Okay, I'm sure you're all shocked not only that a world from Nuts and Bolts made it into the top 10, but that it's Showdown Town of all places, which also makes this my favorite hub world in the entire series by a sizable margin. Well, let me explain. The reason why I like it so much is that it actively encourages and rewards exploration. With all the other levels in Nuts and Bolts, everywhere you need to go is marked on your map, so you don't need to take time to get to know your surroundings. Showdown Town revels in doing the opposite, filling the town with so much stuff to see, but never directing you towards any of it. But searching for that stuff is worth your while, as grabbing crates in this world gives you more parts for your vehicles, unlocking new potential for you. That focus on wandering around, picking up on details and making mental notes on what is where, and figuring out how to reach it all, and reaping the benefits of doing so. That's exactly what I'm looking for in a Banjo world. Plus, it's where Nuts and Bolts feels the most like its predecessors, with the largest amount of on-foot gameplay and heaviest emphasis on collection over challenges. It is perhaps a bit too cluttered and can feel overwhelming, but that's why I think restricting vehicle usage to the trolley here is a brilliant move, making you capable but not completely unshackled, if that makes sense. So that means that Nuts and Bolts just barely scraped into the top echelon. It had quite a few of the worst levels in the game, but the ones that are good are definitely worth talking about. Number 9, Mayhem Temple. The layout for this one is a bit weird, essentially a big upward spiral for the main areas that splinters off into several sub-areas, giving you a sense of linear vertical progression rather than being a flatter or more square shape. But that helps make Mayhem Temple stand out, as the more guided progression gives you a clear sense of direction right from the get-go. Most areas are blocked off, introducing you to the new interconnected level design that TUI adopted by showing you areas that you can't quite access yet, then letting you find the method to open them later. It's very streamlined in that way, and while I know that design philosophy isn't to everyone's liking, I personally love it, and Mayhem Temple makes for a memorable introduction to it. The Mayan theming is a good twist on the typical opening grassland area cliche, and just about every sub-area from the prison compound to the treasure chamber has some pretty cool objectives. It's definitely brought down by Target Zan's temple though. I'm starting to sour a bit on the Brigo Blaster sections, and this one is no exception, but the rest of this opening stage more than makes up for it. Number 8, Jolly Roger's Lagoon. I've always maintained that this is one of the best examples of a 3D water level done right, escaping a lot of the trappings that these kinds of stages typically suffer from. There's no fear of drowning thanks to the hyperoxygenated water, but that doesn't mean it's not dangerous to explore down in the depths because of all the creatures trying to kill you, like those octopuses and especially the pufferfish. I can't stand those guys. It's got a nice batch of challenges too, and the level is big enough to give you room to breathe, no pun intended, when swimming around, a welcome addition since you're essentially playing 75% of this level in a totally different gameplay style. And the port town that you start in just looks awesome, rustic and worn in with a feeling of history to it. As I said, I love portside and coastal locations, and this is one of the best. I kinda wish this section wasn't so small though. Most of the level is underwater, and that's cool, but I love this part of Jolly Roger's Lagoon so much that I wanted more from it, especially with that catchy tune. Though that doesn't hold a candle to the Atlantis theme, hands down the best banjo song Grant Kirkhope ever composed. It's a wonderful, beautiful accompaniment to a pretty sweet world. Number 7. Hailfire Peaks. There's a couple of reasons why I love Hailfire Peaks so much, encompassing both the surface level factors and deeper design aspects. First, there's the theme, a literal combination of fire and ice with a lava side and ice side right next to each other. I don't think Tooie was the first ever game to use this concept, and it certainly wasn't the last, even within the Banjo series, but while admittedly it doesn't combine the two themes that much, keeping the two sides mostly separate, I still think the novelty is pretty great. Honestly, there's enough connections and warps between the two locations to at least make it convenient to travel through, and the combination of environments on a visual level is great. Both the lava and ice side look totally different but complement each other so well, the reds and blacks with yellow accents of the lava half and the blues and whites with green accents of the ice half work perfectly together. But what I love most is that Hailfire Peaks brings the game back towards platforming gameplay instead of relying on too many gimmicks. As the second to last major level of the game, you've already learned a ton of moves which expand your maneuverability quite a bit. So there's plenty of tasks, especially on the lava side, that introduce dangerous but incredibly satisfying set pieces that you need to traverse correctly or else suffer a horrible fate. No matter which side you're on, you have to keep your wits about you, and it makes this level really stand out. Number 6. Bubble Gloop Swamp. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or not, because I rarely hear this level talked about when discussing favorite worlds from Banjo-Kazooie, but I absolutely love Bubble Gloop Swamp. Despite the dirty swamp aesthetic, there's a lot of life and energy put in here, with the ambient noises accompanying the song giving this place a very nature-heavy focus that makes it feel alive. And that song is absolutely fantastic, an underrated composition in my opinion. Not to mention the Jiggy challenges, as this is where the game gets a little more involved with its objectives since you've already learned a number of abilities by this point. Time-based Jiggy sprints, shock spring jumping up the huts, feeding all the golden Croctus statues, it's all great fun. Really, the only thing I have to complain about is the world's transformation, as the crocodile is pretty slow and its bite attack is pretty unwieldy to use in the midst of gameplay. But that's honestly a tiny black mark on an otherwise fantastic level. Number 5. Witchy World. Here's a level I really didn't appreciate until replaying these games for this video, since something in me always looked down on Witchy World for some reason. I have always loved the theme, a run-down dark carnival with plenty of rides, attractions, and thrills that doesn't really carry an atmosphere of joy, but rather a strange foreboding. Something in the haunting music which somehow manages to make a calliope sound threatening, and the grim, muted colors give this theme park an edge that's welcomed, and makes it fit perfectly within Banjo-Tooie. I guess the problem I had with this world was that I felt it didn't use its theme park concept well enough, but I don't know why I thought that because just about every Jiggy here is tied to some sort of attraction. From sideshow type games and challenges to straight up platforming sections built out of thrill rides, it's all a bunch of incredibly fun and satisfying set pieces that make for a great level. Now if only we could ride that flume of doom. Number 4. Mad Monster Mansion. One of the things I love about the levels of the first two games is how the visuals and sound design really encase you in the world, and nowhere is that more apparent than Mad Monster Mansion. Dark and creepy, while still maintaining that cartoonish style, it fits perfectly with the rest of the game while embracing a more brooding atmosphere. It's not really a scary level, but it takes that idea of a haunted house and paints that Rareware style over it with a ton of dilapidated, worn down rooms that have danger around every corner. This is a stage that's focused less on platforming and more on interesting objectives and characters, with a lot of great tasks and a ton of places to explore. My favorite might be playing the piano with Moat Sand. It's a simple task, but setting it inside a giant church with an organ you can climb onto is pretty awesome. And once again, it's got a phenomenal piece of music to go along with it. I realize that I've been saying that for a lot of these worlds, but damn it, I cannot sing the praises of this soundtrack enough. Grant Kirkhope, you beautiful man, you. Number 3. Cloud Cuckoo Land. Hands down the weirdest and trickiest level in the series in terms of visuals, Cloud Cuckoo Land essentially poses the question, what if you just take whatever random ideas you can come up with and throw them all into a level set high above the clouds? And you know what? It actually works brilliantly. Whatever this level loses in a unified theme, it more than makes up for it with an unabashedly wacky and cartoonish vibe. Sometimes the levels in Tooie feel confined by their concept, as if they focused more on doing justice to the selected environment rather than creating enjoyable tasks. This stage completely avoids that problem by making each Jiggy quest extremely varied in where you're going and what you're doing. Eliminating germs in a trash can, shooting down Zubbas in their nest, and entering a giant wad of stinky cheese, it's bizarre but oh so memorable. There are definitely some sore spots like the boss Minji Django, who isn't hard but can certainly be annoying, and of course the dreaded Canary Mary rematch. but I honestly have way too much fun with the rest of the levels challenges to get upset about that. Cloud Cuckoo Land is a phenomenal way to end a phenomenal game, as well as Tui's presence on this list, as the last 2 levels are both from the first title. Number 2, Treasure Trove Cove. For a lot of Banjo stages, the level designers put a little too much space for the amount of stuff you're collecting. Naturally, as the games progress, you'd expect there would be more level to explore, but it often feels like there's way too much ground you need to cover in order to grab everything. Kazooie mostly avoids that problem, and honestly, the reasons these last 2 levels get the top spot over the others is just that they're the perfect size. As to why Treasure Trove Cove got the runner-up slot, it's really only because I like the aesthetics of this level less. Honestly, I could go back and forth between these last 2 though, because Treasure Trove Cove makes for an incredible level. You meet a lot of great characters like series regular Captain Blubber and travel across terrain that's surprisingly complex for a second level with a lot of horizontal and vertical distance. Tons of great platforming challenges here too, and this is the level where you learn how to fly, significantly expanding the amount of ways to get around. Getting up to the lighthouse is probably my favorite part. It's a simple enough platforming bit, but I honestly love how the music cuts away to wind because of how high up you are. It's a sight for sure. And number 1, Freezeezy Peak. What an amazing level to end this list on. Freezeezy Peak also has the perfect balance between platforming and collecting, and looks and sounds just lovely. Like I just said, I prefer the snowy aesthetics of this to Treasure Trove Cove as it covers a lot of different parts of a winter level. Snowy mountains and cliffs, icy waters, a frozen cave, a Christmas village, it has it all and does it all splendidly. And while it's a big area, the pacing still feels pretty tight thanks to the more involved Jiggy challenges like defeating all the Sir Slushes and collecting all the presents for Boggy's kids. Every part of this level is a gem. The music, the cheerful atmosphere, the goofy face of the giant snowman, even the snow falling onto the ground, which is a small and obvious detail, but one that I still absolutely adore. Levels like this make me remember why I love Banjo-Kazooie in the first place. While just about anyone could create this level's topography note for note, that's only part of why these worlds worked the way they do. They transport you into a realm of fantasy and wonder, something familiar and yet abstracted, something oozing with charm and likability. I don't know about you, but Banjo's levels feel like an escape into a place unlike any other, and this is no exception. Freezeezy Peak is an absorbing, wonderfully crafted level, and is my favorite world in the Banjo-Kazooie series. Well, that's the end of the list. Of course, my opinions are solely my own, and I'm sure you don't agree with a lot of what I've said. So I'm curious to know, what are your favorite and least favorite levels from the Banjo series, and would you like to see me do more ranked lists like this? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're here, why not subscribe and click that notification bell as well? I've also recently enabled super thanks if you'd like to support the channel. Just click that big thanks button below the video, or you can head over to the Cloud Connection Patreon, the link's in the description. I've actually got another video centered around Banjo in the works right now, which should be coming out in August, so I hope you're looking forward to that. But until next time, this is Cloud Connection signing off.